Hi, my name is Franceria Moore with the Prosperity Agenda, and welcome to Coaching Up Close, our mini webinar series designed to work some quick tips into your busy schedule to help you improve your coaching skills. But first, let me introduce TPA. We are working to end persistent poverty by changing the way that we think about, build programs for, and coach families under financial stress. Coaching is, of course, a big part of our DNA, and we work with organizations all over the country on their coaching programs. Before we jump in, if you're joining us live, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar, so save your questions. And as a note, please feel free to view this video and past Coaching Up Close videos with your colleagues and those interested in incorporating coaching into their work with families. You can do that by visiting our YouTube page and looking for us under the Prosperity Agenda. And we also invite you to visit our website, www.theprosperityagenda.org, as well as familycenteredcoaching.org to register for these upcoming webinars and much more over on our YouTube webpage and LinkedIn page. All right, that's enough for now. Let's get started on today's session where we'll be discussing cultivating a culture of feedback. If you've been in this type of work for any period of time, we know that through a culture of feedback, we not only make space to share our staff voices, but we show that we value and appreciate one another as we work toward collaborating to make things better for the families and communities that we serve. By growing alongside families and modeling the learning that we have, we can provide holistic care for families as long as there is trust in the ability to share feedback. However, there must be intentional steps that we take as leaders and members of an organization to ensure that we can cultivate a culture where feedback is not only expressed and heard, but where it is also valued and appreciated. A failure to strive for the latter with the same vigor as the former can lead to environments where coaching is not as effective due to a lack of trust and collaboration among those delivering services. So it's very important that not only do our employees feel that they can express and that they were heard when they express their feedback, but also that they know that it was valued and that it was appreciated, that it actually mattered. We dig deeper into this topic through a case study on the topic with our partner organization, New Moms, based in Chicago. Again, shout out to our partner, New Moms in Chicago, Illinois. We work with them and we're able to learn and surface 6 ways that organizations can support the adoption of the coaching mindset and a family-centered approach to service delivery. I'll be sure to drop the link for that case study in the description box below, so check the description box for that link. So let's discuss the 6 ways to cultivate a culture of feedback according to our partner, New Moms. The first thing that they pointed out was that we have to make feedback accessible and collaborative. That is to say that it should be easy in order for folks to give their feedback and to also read and respond or hear the feedback of others within the organization. We know that this tends to be a challenge if we work in environments and in organizations that tend to have silos, meaning we work in our small department and we don't really communicate with folks outside of our immediate job responsibilities. And so we must be intentional about creating an opportunity for feedback to be accessible and collaborative. New Moms did this by utilizing a tool called Slack. Some of you may be familiar with it. We use it here at the Prosperity Agenda. It is a quick inter-office instant message system that allows them to pose questions that engage with their team on a regular basis. Asking questions to the team embeds a culture norm of continuous feedback and encourages staff participation. New Moms utilizes anonymous feedback loops such as individual and organizational assessments to dig deeper into the feedback and to cultivate that feeling of collaboration as it relates to the feedback that was given. So there are 2 different levels of feedback when we look to make it accessible and collaborative. We can do that through informal means like our instant message platforms, through discussion board posts, through discussion boards in general that we can use in Office Teams and Google Meet, and et cetera. But you can also embed this type of access to feedback and collaboration in your formal processes for providing feedback as well. The second thing that we learn from new moms is that you have to value and appreciate staff voice. They did this through working with leadership and supervisors to make sure that their language as they were hearing feedback was supportive, appreciative and encouraging. One of the number one ways to scare off honest feedback is to not know how to receive, to hear the feedback. It's not often that staff or people in general don't have a voice. It is often that their voice is not amplified, or that there's so much going around us that we cannot hear those voices. What we learn through new moms is that often we have to intentionally turn down the background noise so that we can hear the voices of the staff that are sharing what their feedback is. And we have to receive that in a way that shows that we value and appreciate that staff person stepping up to share that feedback with us. And so they continue to share that there is an active effort in integrating staff input into their continued learning process. And so it's not just that we hear the feedback, but we figure out immediately how we can incorporate that. How does it show up immediately? What is the payoff for this person stepping outside of that potential comfort zone to share the feedback with us? We want to make sure that we're doing something with it, that it is heard and it's also acted upon in some way at the level that you can at that point. The third thing is that you want to create space for feedback. I know that sounds really, really small, but it's important that you create a space where feedback can happen. So new moms talked about program supervisors creating regularly scheduled check-ins to gather feedback during weekly team meetings, making feedback a part of the organization's norms, make staff feel more comfortable to share. So again, creating a space where now we know when we come into this space, the purpose of our time together is to give feedback to one another, and making that such a part of our daily way of working that it begins to feel like just a part of the normal everyday way of working within this organization. At first, it will be a pull. If there has not been a culture created around positive feedback, it will feel like a pull. But the benefit of creating a culture around something is that eventually it becomes the unspoken rule. It becomes the unspoken, unexplained way that we do things. We don't want to go for long, extended periods of time without checking that. Please refer to our last Coaching Up Close, where we talked about building the process of continuous improvement through a community of practice. It's important that we have space also to reflect and review our processes and our ways of operating to make sure that they're still in alignment. So that's not to say that we'll create these spaces and never look back, but in creating a culture, your goal is to make sure that it just feels like the norm, that it feels like the way that it's supposed to be, rather than it constantly being worked. We want for people to feel that comfortable giving feedback. And in order to do that, we have to be intentional to create the space for folks to do that. All right, number 4, allow time for difficult conversations. It is very, very possible that in hearing feedback, you will be faced with difficult conversations with staff around complex topics like equity and inclusion are important to have, and they take time. Committing and valuing these important conversations creates more meaningful and lasting change. It allows for us to go internally to review our beliefs, our process systems, and the way that we show up in our work. And it gives us space to have those uncomfortable and difficult conversations. We are always in a place where in a coaching approach, we're always in a position where we want to create safe spaces, but we also recognize when there are times that it might call for a brave space. A brave space is that this is going to make me feel uncomfortable. And I am saying this at the risk of not feeling the safest internally, but I will be brave and step outside of that comfort for the greater good of us progressing toward better. We have to be ready to embrace those difficult conversations and leave space and time for processing them. Remember that even in the coaching approach, we do not start at a solution. In the same way as we are cultivating a culture of feedback, we have to know that there may not always be an immediate solution. There may not always be an immediate resolution. What we are there to do is to hold space for that difficult conversation, to allow time for us to process it, and to have meaningful and transformative conversations so that we can have sustained and lasting change as a result of the difficult conversation. Number 5, have a dedicated staff position and or group working to measure and implement family-centered coaching. This is a big step, and we are really, really excited that many of our organizations, including New Moms and several other national partners, are now making the step toward having dedicated staff folks who are there to measure and guide the implementation of this approach within the organization. By creating an entire position to manage the implementation and the iteration needed for this approach, you are really allowing space for that feedback to be implemented immediately, to learn from that, and to continue to push forward. Again, in a culture of feedback, feedback loops become imperative. That means that within our system of operating, we have several different leverage points at which we receive information, and then we release as an output a response to that feedback. Without those continual feedback loops, without someone who is focused on paying attention to that, oftentimes the feedback can go without any recognition. Sometimes it can go, it can kind of be brushed under the rug. It could be dismissed as too big or too large for us to do anything about at that moment. So that's something that we learned through New Moms, is that if available, it is helpful in creating a culture of feedback to have a dedicated staff person working to monitor the implementation, measure the implementation of the family-centered coaching approach. All right, number 6. Number 6 is grow alongside families. Through New Moms, we learned that buy-in, their commitment to this implementation was created through empowering participants, through hearing what they experienced in order to support the organization in thriving. Most importantly, participants in New Moms experienced holistic care that enabled them to grow. And so oftentimes in approaches that are human-centered and family-centered, we often talk about, we want to share power with families. We want to give share decision-making power with families. We want to put them in the driver's seat. What we have learned through New Moms is that you have to create, according to the principles of trauma-informed care. We also do have a video about trauma-informed care. According to the principles of trauma-informed care, you must provide transparent care and grow alongside families, not leaving them behind, but bringing them along with you in the process, showing them, encouraging them in how to provide feedback about the program. Again, this should be this should be a part of your feedback loop mechanism, that you should hear from your frontline staff, you should hear from supervisors, leaders, and managers, and you should also have a space to hear from families so that you could grow alongside them as their needs evolve. So can you as an organization evolve alongside with them. So those are the 6 lessons that we've learned about cultivating a culture of feedback. We're appreciative to New Moms for helping us better understand how important cultivating a culture of feedback is as we navigate deepening our commitment to the family-centered coaching approach. We are inviting you all to reflect on these suggestions and consider how you can be a part of creating a culture of feedback and a positive work environment for the sake of continuous improvement and service. Remember, more than anything, that there is no one size fits all in coaching. So be curious and patient with yourself and your team as you work to identify ways of building a culture of feedback. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and join us next month for more coaching tips and resources. And be sure to stick around for the question and answer portion. And of course, if you have any questions about our coaching training program, or if you'd like to sign up for the next Coaching Up Close mini webinar, visit us at theprosperityagenda.org and check our LinkedIn page. Until the next time, thank you, everyone. Bye. All right. That is it. As promised, I'd like to leave some time for us to take any questions that you all might have about the case study that we completed with New Moms around creating a culture of feedback. If there are any thoughts about any of the suggestions, if there are any other tips and suggestions that you might want to add about how you are working to create a culture of feedback, please make sure that you share those in the chat box. I am adding the link here to the oh no, I need to send it to everyone. I'm adding the link here to the case study that you can visit on our website. Let me check the chat box to see if there are any questions. All right, Logan says, I like the comment about coaching not starting at the solution. That is a frequent stumbling point for our staff. Absolutely. We talk about at the Prosperity Agenda, the anatomy of the coaching mindset. And we really create these two personas, that there's a fixing mindset and there's a coaching mindset. And there's a lot of empathy for the part of our brains that want to fix something. That is our human nature, to protect one another, to care for one another. And so when we tap into that fixer mindset, oftentimes it is because of that part of us that longs to support, to help, to aid in someone else's time of need. What often happens is we get stuck in the fixer mindset and we never consider what might be possible if we supported a person rather than giving them the solution. Thank you for that. Yes, we will be sending out a link to the recording. It'll be posted on Friday. There'll be an automated email that'll go out that will contain the recording. It'll send you to our YouTube page. Hope that you have an opportunity to check that out. All right, let me see what else is in the chat box. Sorry, it's a really weird scroll. Thank you, Karen. Yes, again, the recording will be on the YouTube page on Friday. The person getting the, Logan says, the person getting the coaching also seems to put a lot of pressure on themselves that they can't get right to the solution. Absolutely, that is something that happens. And that's why that final tip that we got from the moms around bringing families along with you is so important, because in the same way that we scaffold with families as they're reaching their goals, we do want to scaffold with them as they learn how to share their feedback with us, as they learn how our processes and systems work, so that they can be an active participant in the way that they are receiving services. And so even as we're talking about feedback, we have to create an opportunity for families to engage in that way so that they can become used to engaging in that way, so that they can hold us accountable to our commitment to holding that space for centering their humanity, for centering their family needs, for centering this coaching approach. Thank you for that, Logan. Anita says, how do you begin to create a culture of feedback when the majority of the staff have worked in silos for years, including the directorship who created the silos? This is a very, very this is a great question, Nita. Thank you so much for asking this question. I think one of the things that we could begin to do, regardless of where you fall in the organization, is begin to reach across the aisle. I know that that statement is steeped in a lot of political connotation, but that is the idea. The idea is that someone somewhere has to be willing to reach across, to yell across if you have to swim across, to walk across, and to engage in conversations through curiosity. I often talk about how necessary it is when you're in a coaching mindset to be curious. There's a major difference, however, between being curious and being nosy. Curiosity leads you to want to understand the answer as you presume that the person is right. Nosiness starts at the assumption that a person is wrong. And so when we approach folks with curiosity, we can begin to open up the conversations to understand and to hear feedback. Let's also keep in mind that feedback is not always a criticism. Feedback can be an appreciation. Feedback can be a celebration. Feedback is not just limited to things that you can improve upon, okay? Feedback can also be very strengths-based. As a matter of fact, I would say that feedback at its most effective point is feedback that is steeped in the strengths of the individual who is receiving the feedback. I hope that was helpful. Linda says, thank you. How would you start with new staff that is new, that are new to this field? Same thing. I think that it might be in some cases much easier to get new staff involved in this process than it would be to bring along a staff who has in the previous question been working in silos for years. Creating this cultural feedback is important so that even as the new folks begin to join your organization, there is a mechanism that they can join. There's a culture that they can join and become a part of, rather than waiting and kind of figuring out how to navigate this system, this network on their own. And so with new staff, I think that many of our processes within most organizations are geared toward having feedback. We have 30-day reviews, we have 90-day reviews. There are a lot of different points that most organizations build into hearing and checking in with new staff. And so I would suggest starting just through those systems that are already in place, checking in with them and inviting them to share, almost setting them up to in a situation where reflection is needed for us to have an effective meeting, asking them to come with thoughts about what's working and what's tending to get in the way. A lot of times getting people used to feedback is getting them to reflect in the beginning. It's setting up a space where they can reflect and get curious about their approach. I feel like my answers are really long, so please let me know if I need to wrap it up. Okay, let's see, we'll take a few more. Kimberly, I like the idea of a dedicated staff to monitor, of a dedicated staff person to monitor and measure FCC. Absolutely. If your organization has the capacity to do that, it is something that I highly recommend. But prior to joining the Prosperity Agenda, I worked as a lead coach for a national organization. This was a part of my role, and it was paramount in helping us to adopt the family-centered coaching mindset and not let it fall to the wayside, as things tend to happen because life, because demands, because of the competing demands and whatnot. So having that dedicated staff person is very helpful if you have the capacity to do that. Jeremiah says, does the article include models, questions for feedback? No, that case study doesn't. It's really just sharing what we learned from the partner. We do have other tools and resources available on our website. If you'd like to visit that, you can go to familycenteredcoaching.org. And we do have tools like family-focused powerful questions. We do have tools for supervisors as well. So I invite you to go over to our webpage at familycenteredcoaching.org to check that out. If we have questions, who can we reach out to? You can reach out directly to me. Just send me an email at fran@theprosperityagenda.org, FRAN@theprosperityagenda.org, and I'll be glad, elated to answer any questions you have. As you can see, I could talk about this for a very long time. All right, let's see here. How do you level the power dynamic in a feedback process? That's a very deep conversation. I don't know that I could adequately answer that question in the few seconds that we have left. But what I will say in a brief response is that it's not something that's going to happen overnight. As we pointed out in the case study, it is a dedication to building collective voice within your organization. It is not something that we could send out a survey and get. It's not something that we could have a few PDs about. We can't do a few team buildings and get there. It's going to be dedicated action over time that will change people's perception and expectation of who you are as an agency and organization. And so the reality of it is that it may take months to years in order to get there. Just like with any relationship, it takes time to repair and create a new dynamic. So that's kind of what I would say. You have to start the process so that people can believe you, and so that people can trust you. That when they share, that it'll be heard, that it will be received, and that it will be appreciated and valued within the space. There's so many more. I don't really know if we can get to them all. I'm going to read this last one because, again, I want to be mindful of the time. If you need to go, we completely understand. We hope that we'll see you next month. Don says, my organization is beginning to implement a voluntary peer-to-peer coaching program as the foundation for other forms of coaching to come in the future, which will be compulsory, such as supervisor to staff coaching, and staff to client coaching. Our goal is to transform our culture via this voluntary approach in advance of the compulsory coaching programs. I think that that's smart. That's a very smart approach to moving into this coaching approach, into this way of working with organizations, is to first bring your team along, and let them get curious about it. Let them, wander around for a bit. Let them bump into a few things, so that you demystify what it means to change your approach. Oftentimes when people hear about coaching, when they've been working in other I'll say when they've been using maybe a traditional a traditional case management approach, can be intimidating because they are having to learn how to take their hands off the wheel. And if you can imagine being someone who has been driving for years and someone says, now you have a car that all you have to do is speak to it. At first, your instincts are going to be to grab the wheel. And so that's what we're doing through mindset training. That's what we're doing through having these conversations and creating Slack channels where people can get curious about this idea without it being a risk. Okay, we want to make risk-friendly environments for them to explore this. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Don, for that last comment. Thanks for staying over a few moments. We will see you next month, and check out the recording that'll be posted on Friday. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Myra. Thank you, Don. Thank you, Denise. Monique, thank you so much. We'll see you all the next time. Bye.